So basically, I'm just going to do a scan of the room.
In the housing especially. But even the difference between Gil and BC is really shocking. BC is much more expensive. Oh yeah. I know the salaries are no, I know. But I think I don't know if I think in the house is so expensive. I wonder what the balance is. I don't know. I wonder what the balance should be like. Maybe there are areas of the that I don't know. Well, we sold our house, which was in we sold the house there and we got a house.
Got all this like Zoom and everything.
Traveling late food service, which is just now coming. So if you do that, you will say rather than
Because I'm going to be talking
quite a lot lately too, but maybe not as much as
we'll do that. Gosh, we've been joking about it. That's all we do.
Thinker who saves her clients time, emotional distress, and expensive litigations. She works with organizations, teams, leaders, and professionals to advance learning, cultivate change, reduce conflicts, and emotional distress to build resilience. Joyce is the president of the Interpersonal Wellness Services, Inc. She's also founder of the Resilience Building Wellness Improvement System Program, the ICF-approved WIS Coach Training Certification Program, and the Global Workplace Wellness Summit, which offers a wellness education summit to develop and supplement wellness programs at work. Joyce has a master's degree in conflict analysis and management, is a certified professional coach with the International Coach Federation, and is a certified professional training and development professional. Please join me in welcoming Joyce Odidison. Welcome, Joyce.
Good morning, everyone. Isn't it nice to be in a room and see other people? Put your hand up if you're excited about that. Good. So am I. You know, last week I did a keynote in Las Vegas, and it was good to see people. A little scary sometimes because, you know, most of the people there are not wearing masks sometimes like we do. But they were very cooperative, and in our sessions, they wore masks, and it was good to speak at an international audience, and it was really good to be back in the room. That was my first VL with Canada since COVID. So you test, right? And you're like, what to expect? So it was interesting. But I'm very excited to be here with you today in Montreal, as we all are. How many of you are from local? Okay, so just the two of you. I think there's somebody here from Manitoba. Who's from Manitoba? Hi. Okay. So am I. I'm from little old Winnipeg. Good. And so good to have you guys in the room. So this morning, I had a conversation with Katie a couple months back, and she talked about some of the challenges that you may face in your work. So what I want us to do this morning in our time together is to brainstorm and come up with ideas on how we can challenge some of the situations that are causing stress. You see, what we've come to notice is that employees on their exit surveys are saying that they're leaving their jobs because of the people and the way they're being treated at work. All of us want to be treated with fairness, with equity, with dignity, and respect. And when we don't get that at work, especially at work, there are two areas where it is most crucial for us to be treated well. That's at home and at work. And when that doesn't happen, well, you know what it feels like, right? We start to internalize it. We start to think that something is wrong with us. And we start wondering, like, who do they think I am? Why do they treat me this way? Do I have a sign on my forehead that says, kick me? And since we don't, we want to ensure that we become more resilient in the way we address the issues that come up, the way we call on others, the way we respectfully intervene when challenging situations come up. Because, see, one of the things that I do at Interpersonal Wellness Services is that I see people when their behavior isn't A-okay. So part of our job there is to help professionals to get their behavior to that place where it is in sync with the culture of the workplace, the respectful workplace policies. And I spent many years working with post-secondary institutions, universities, colleges, and I continue to do, currently working on a big project with Miami University in Ohio. So today, one of the things we're going to cover is the art of leaders. Leader relations to prevent bullying in the world of work. The world of work has changed. We no longer have tolerance for some of the things that we used to tolerate. And even our financial institutions are saying, you need to have that corporate social responsibility. You need to show that. To show that you are financially viable, that your organization is sustainable. You have to have those environmental pieces in place. So it's becoming more and more important for leaders to recognize these signs in the workplace among themselves, their peers, and of course be able to role model it for those you lead. It's incredibly important to do that. And so sometimes as leaders, we communicate in a haste. We communicate sometimes, I call from our hip. We don't communicate with our brains because we're so busy. We're multitasking. And we react rather than respond. And we bark at people and command rather than invite dialogue. And often that puts our people at a very confrontational stance, and we start to have friction in the workplace. So it's very important for us to talk about that as leaders, put our egos aside, and just remember we all have belly buttons. And as creatures with belly buttons, we all are going to, from time to time, make mistakes. But how do we recover? How do we pick ourselves up? How do we help each other so we can be successful and move on from there? So when bullying happens, how do we stay away from that bullying in your team? How do you get your team members to stop bullying each other? How do you bring it to the awareness? Those are some of the things we'll cover, and of course how to identify bullies in diverse workplaces. Now I'm here, I'm on your time. If there is something that you want me to focus in on, or something comes up, you have a challenge in your workplace or particular situation, I can put on my conflict analyst hat and help you through that. I can also put on my coaching hat, help you to come up with some solutions on how you can move forward through it. So this is more of a working group rather than just a keynote where I just come and tell you all the things I know. I want you to get your hands into it, and I want to partner with you so you can take this back to your workplace tomorrow and start implementing. Does that sound like a deal? Okay, good. Excellent. So bullying still goes on, frighteningly. It still goes on. It's 2022 and it's still happening. COVID happened and we're still humans, right? And so I was saying to my group yesterday, I said, I only do this work with live people. I have never been called to the cemetery to do this work. So if you're alive, That's where we expect conflicts to happen. That's where challenges happen, because humans are dynamic and we interact and we're stretched thin, especially in a leadership role. You have so many things to look at and to pay attention to and respond to. So sometimes we don't say what we want to say the way we need to say it. Does that make sense? Am I the only one who feels that way, or am I in good company? Huh? Okay, all right. It must be confronted. And sometimes what happens is, as leaders, when I work with leaders, often you start to think that everyone else sees the world the way you do. You start to think like, well, why don't they know that? Why can't they behave? Why can't they just do their work, Joyce? Why do I have to tell them what to? Why do I have to tell them to treat each other kindly? They're not babies. I hear this all the time, and the reality is, people need reminders. We all do. And they are not going to see the world like you. And so we have to be patient, we have to be empathetic, and we have to be understanding and persistent. So in our breakout groups, at your table, I want you to talk about how you define bullying. So how do you define bullying in leadership? Do you think technology has played a role in leaders' ability to bully others or their team members? And in your group, I want you to discuss that. Then we'll come back, we'll look at some of my definitions, see if they fall into your category, and then we'll continue on with more discussion and engagement and interaction, because I want to hear from you, and I want to hear what's important to you, and I want to ensure that this is in sync with your needs. Let's take 10 minutes for this first exercise. I'll see how fast you are, and I'll decide from there.
In a way, it's a roundabout way of these little
Both. Yes, in your workplace, because we're seeing more of the
Two students I'm trying not to make it joke.
They're not the position.
Not make a joke. Because I don't think it's a very good joke. Which is usually what I feel. I would suspect there is a gender element to it, absolutely, but I don't think it's the gender element we might assume it is. We're very lucky in terms of our leadership team, that I don't think there's anyone who, I mean, it's something I'm sensitive to, I'm paying attention to it, and my sense is that there's no one in the leadership team and my faculty who goes to bullying behavior when you're stressed or when you're doing something difficult, which is when you tend to see it emerge. Where I see bullying happen is actually among some senior faculty in particular, and bullying staff in particular. And that's the most worrying single place where I see it. I'm also aware that just because of the nature of education, many of those senior faculty are women. And I'm also 100% sure that they would be absolutely mortified if there was any serious suggestions that their behavior was bullying. But everybody else knows it. So that's kind of the complex space that I see for what's working. Yeah, I mean, I experienced that it's difficult to know. I experienced stuff that can feel like bullying or attempting bullying. But I have to be very careful to assume that it's bullying and that it's not legitimate pushback. Right? And that's really hard to judge because I'm an enlightened probation officer. And so I am the very identity that we want people to be pushing back against, right? Like we want people to be going, no love, you don't understand, you're not paying attention, right? That has to happen, that's a conversation. And my subjective response to it has to be kind of grounded. And you have to go, okay, is this someone who's like, so one of the most difficult situations I saw, one of the most difficult situations I had in the last year, and I'll try and keep this as anonymous as possible, was a really very highly respected, it's hard to give us anonymous because so few people in this bracket, but let's say a very highly respected female minority scholar who got a big grant, wanted a ton of stuff out of the faculty, and we'd already given more in kind than we'd ever given to any grant before to help her be successful in getting the grant. And she wanted a bunch more.
2 more minutes, and then I'll hear from you.
And I couldn't give it to her because I was looking at it and going, this is so inequitable with every other researcher. If we actually give her this stuff, you know, we're opening a floodgate that, you know, we just can't afford. I mean, it's not about willingness. And she brought a reasonable apprehension of bias against me. Was unsuccessful. The provost said, I've looked at these materials and I don't see bias here. I see redeeming and the scope of what we expect us to do. She appealed the lack of reasonable apprehension of bias. And this time she got the reasonable apprehension of bias. And then there's a whole memo of understanding about how we're going to interact, you know, all that kind of thing. And this is someone I talk to like once every 2 years. And I have no control. There's a chair between me and her. So I have actually very little direct control over what the person is doing. And that to me felt like using mechanisms that were meant to achieve good in order to make a point that was directed at me. And so that's
Okay, everyone. I know it's tough to pull yourselves away from that conversation, but I'm going to just give a few of you an opportunity to share with me what came up from your table. Table 6, you seemed quite excited. Yes, go ahead.
So we had a very interesting brief, but I think we're just basically trying to define how we think about what is bullying in leadership, whether it's between leaders in the faculty or from the executive team down. So we had some discussion around that. But basically we came away with this definition. It's about a person who shapes information for their own purposes to achieve their own goals, or using process to marginalize individuals or groups of people. It can be subtle and hidden around rules and regulations.
That's a good one. Really good one. Yes. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, it's very interesting because I want to share some of a story with you about, let me see, let me get to one of my definitions. I have a definition here somewhere. Where is it? One or more people with more physical or social power that they use to act out verbal or physical aggression towards the victim. So you could have groups or individuals that team up to bully. It doesn't have to be just one person. Sometimes it's more than one person doing it. And it happens in groups actually, the crowding piece that's been more popular now, and you see more of it in the younger generation. So I was in my office, and the gentleman came in, and this is when I was on contract with one of the post-secondary institutions that I've worked with, and he was a chair, and he said, "I think something is wrong with me, Joyce. I must be having depression or something." It's like, really? What happened? And he says, "Well, every time I give an idea to my team members, I feel henpecked. I feel just abused, mentally and verbally abused. They will take my idea and they will toss it aside and they will criticize it. And by the end of the meeting, I feel 2 inches tall," right? And he was a male in a female-dominated environment. And we see the reverse, right? And he was also the only minority. So he was male, of a diverse background. And his team members were all female intellectuals, all intellectuals, right? So then I had another situation where I had a chair came to my office, and he had been in depression for a while. You could just see it in his demeanor. And he was sharing with me, he said, "You know, my boss, I just cannot do anything right. I cannot do anything right. I don't even feel like a person anymore." And this had gone on for 10 years. He had been in this role, he liked his job, but he didn't like his boss. And he was trying to cope, but he was just at the breaking point. So these things happen among peers, and they happen with subordinates. And it's interesting because part of my role sometimes as a contractor with the organizations is to do the investigations and to meet those folks who are actually perpetuating the bullying. You know what? I have never met one with 2 heads. Or a really bad person. These are individuals like you and I who get up every day and plan to go do good work and serve. And do they serve? Yes, they serve. But in their course of work, they're also causing irreparable damage to a segment of the people they serve. And so what I want to do is demystify the whole notion of bullying, because too often we think it's reserved for certain people. They're not. It's ordinary people with belly buttons like you and I. And it's very difficult doing those investigations and speaking to these brilliant people who just don't see how the way they speak to another person or changing somebody's job or their function or their roles or their duties 10 times in a year can make them start shaking, right? It unsettles you. And they just don't understand that, you know, even if a person has a different way of working or a different way of teaching or a different style, that you as the leader need to adapt the way you talk to them. Because if you perpetuate the same thing that they're doing, how do you tell them to stop? Right? So I've had situations where I've interviewed leaders, and we've had a mid-level leader who's not getting along with their team, and the senior leader comes in and figures this is the way to get that person, put them in shape. I'm like, no. Because you're now demonstrating exactly what you want them not to do. Let's come back to the table and start talking about what is it we want to have instead. And what is it we want to do with those folks? How can we help them move forward? So I'm going to go back to my slides because I move ahead to get that, because there are some pieces I wanted to touch base with you on. We just did this one. So let's talk about key takeaways. Bullying is not reserved for special people. Many leaders inadvertently bully because they're busy, they're short in time, they may not be clear on instructions, or they're dealing with their own fears and insecurities. Let's face it, we're humans, and we all have those fears and insecurities. And when we're not aware of them, sometimes they control us. And we say things, or we get angry and we lose our cool, but that doesn't mean it has to stay there. You see, what we used to think is that bullying was something that you have to do over and over and over again. But when the legislation changed back in 2011, it reminded us it could be a single act. Right? It could be a single act. It's not where someone does something over and over again. Someone could do one thing, one single act that cause you so much distress at work, humiliate, embarrass, coerce. So let's keep that in mind. It's not necessarily a character trait. It could be an incident. It's how we pull ourselves back from that. You see, one of the things I love about my work is the fact that we don't get to stay where we are. So my foundational model is about improvement. All of us are able to make mistakes, and all of us are prone to doing that. How do we move from there? How do we pick ourselves up and say, you know what? That did not come out the way I wanted it to. I remember when my kids were small, I had my office at home, and I would go to clients' place, I would come back in, and sometimes I'm on the phone, and my kids were small, and they would just barge into my office, Mommy, I'm like, we have this little thing, just go back out, and let's start over. I don't get, I hate starting over. And at one point, I no longer had to say anything. It was like, and they would just go back and do their stamping outside, and then they would come back. Okay, Mommy, is it safe to talk now? So, and you know, I say that because as humans, we forget that when we get older, we can start over. It's okay. It's not just reserved for little kids. We can start over. You see, the first thing the legislation requires us to do is to tell the person to stop. If I say something to you, or if there is an exchange or an incident of incivility where you feel traumatized by what I've said or what I've done, and you apologize, and you show remorse, and you want to make it better. I have never done an investigation where that was the case. It's usually the opposite, where people actually, it didn't happen, they pretended that it didn't happen, or they didn't deal with it. That's when you start creating that resentment and anger, and the person who's been the victim don't feel that there's an opportunity for closure. You see, that is the thing. When the legislation talks about you could do one act that damages a person so much, there are people who will never come back into the workplace because of a bullying or harassment incident. And so we have to start thinking differently about this And that's why I love that we have the standards, the psychological health and safety standards, because it really gives us the tools we need to start thinking about what is the workplace, what should it look like. And it's interesting because when I work with other groups and I talk about bullying, and I talk about our standards, because it's Canadian standards, so we'll talk a little bit more about it. But here are some of the statistics, right? We're seeing that communication is now playing a big role in how we're bullying. We have more access. We don't have to have you in my office anymore to bully or to tell you up, right? I can text message. We had an investigation and had to go through myriads of text messages for someone who's being bullied by another person, but that one went on for a while, right? So we had to get the text messages and get that from them and from the carriers. But these are ways and interesting, and I mean you will see it in your students too, that they're getting very creative. Social media. How many people have been embarrassed? I had someone who reached out to me the other day, and she said her nephew committed suicide because his partner, his ex-girlfriend, exposed something about him on social media. So we're seeing those things are having impact, and we've seen them in the colleges and in the universities too, where people are using the message board, the social media, all of those pieces to denigrate their colleagues. It always is the strangest thing when I'm working with a leader who is talking poorly about another leader to their employees. I often ask them, like, what are you trying to get? What is your goal? And these are things that people do without conscious thought of the consequences. I don't care how bad your colleague is, you don't talk negatively about them with the subordinates, because you're setting up a bad precedence. You're telling your employees it's okay to denigrate your coworkers, and you don't have to respect this leader, because I don't think they're deserving of respect. And this is where we begin to dehumanize each other, right? And that needs to stop. We need to pay attention to those things and catch ourselves and pin our mouths up and say, oh, I'm sorry. What was I saying again? Those are the times you forget what you were saying. If you find yourself in such a situation, it's important for us to have those times where we recognize where we're going and we turn around, we start over, or we stop. It's important for us to pay attention to that. So I wanted to just share some of those stats with you so you could see where the means we're using to bully each other. But it doesn't stop. Yes, go ahead.
Can you go back to the 58% is influence and coercion? Can you say more about that? That's really interesting how big. It's not surprising, I guess, but that's the sort of insipid day-to-day things that are happening. I don't know if you can say more about influence and coercion.
Wow. We had such a public display of it when Trump was in power. Mm-hmm. Who would have thought that these strong people would be quiet? Influence and coercion. They were afraid of him bullying them, denigrating them on social media. And we had such a public display of it here in around the world, because everybody was watching American news. So that's just one example. But I've seen it in the organization where there is a leader that is so autocratic that everyone is fearful to disagree or to share a different perspective. And so everybody becomes, well, just do what's easy, because nobody wants to be on the chopping block. Everybody's preserving themselves, protecting themselves. Self-preservation sets in. So influence and coercion, and that can happen in many ways. Yes, you have your hand at the back.
I just wanted to give another example, but what you said, Joyce, really resonates with me. I have a colleague who has an assessment committee that is formed with her colleagues, so her faculty. And there is a member of that assessment committee, a faculty member, who exerts enormous influence and coercion over her colleagues in that assessment committee to make sure they vote in the way that she wants, to get the outcome that she wants.
Yep.
And as a leader, as a dean, it is very hard to combat that.
So the question then is, what are the recourse?
Yeah.
What are the things you have open to you, and where do you get help? Because all of us at some point are going to get face to face with a situation where we feel coerced or influenced to do something that's against our conscience. And sometimes you have to be the Lone Ranger and say, I can't live with that. You know, it's based on principle, but not everybody have the ability to do that. Not everybody have the strength to do that. And most people just want to toe the line. They just want to come to work and go home in peace. They don't want to be singled out and be put on the chopping block and be told and belittled in meetings. And this is where the power of numbers come in. This is where silence can be dangerous. Because if you witness it, you have a responsibility to speak to the person, the victim, if not the perpetrator. If enough people come around the victim, guess what happens? The perpetrator backs down. But the more alone that person is, the more people who decide they're going to just put their head down and do their work, the more power the perpetrator has. There is power in numbers, and we forget that. One of the things that I often have to remind individuals with when I'm either interviewing them or even when I'm doing reports is, do not just go tell somebody, oh, you know, Katie has been on my case. I don't like how she's behaving. Write a report. You're educating people. Write a report. Nobody ignores you when you write a report. Write a report. Even if it's just one page. And you want to start by, here's what I've observed. Here are the incidents. Day 1, this happened. Incident 1, incident 2, incident 3. Here's how I responded. Here's what I thought was happening. Here's what I'm beginning to realize is occurring. Don't just go sit in your boss's office or sit in the other person's office and say, you know, I'm really concerned. They think you're just, we actually have a strategy we teach leaders is, when people are in your office, you ask them, are you here for vent or are you here for solution? So they think you're just here to vent. Until you bring that piece of paper. I would like to put this on file. I have a concern that I'd like to raise. I need your support. I need you to help me identify where this needs to go or who needs to hear this. We're too simple in our thinking and letting these things go. And I've gone through so many situations. Had that person written a report, it wouldn't have lasted this long. They wouldn't have had that heart attack. You know, I have a number of deans and chairs who, in their 50s, heart attack, strokes, because of the stress. Bottling this up. It's not healthy. We're not designed to live that way. Because you spend such extended time with people at work and at home. Why do you think our divorce rate is 50% and plus? Because if you're not happy at home, it's tough. It's just one of those situations you can't comprehend because that's your safe place. Work is the next one. When you spend so much time in that relationship and it's toxic, it has a physical impact on your health. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for providing, all of those different scenarios and, approaches. I think my question is specifically, coming in regards to influence and coercion. So in a situation where there has been bullying and harassment by full professors, so according to academic rank, so who sit sort of at the top of the hierarchy and have been navigating, this interplay of influence and coercion for the last 10 years, to the point where it is absolutely ingrained into the culture, of the faculty, where there has been so much fear and angst and anxiety that nothing has been documented. And when as a dean, you request documentation and say, okay, I can't move forward unless these behaviors and actions are documented, but then recognizing the intense fear, anxiety, because these individuals are full professors, and the coercion, the influence, the bullying and harassment, other than directed at the dean, is also being directed at assistant and associates. I know you probably don't have the answer, but I was just wondering if we could just talk about those long-term habits of mind and how, as leaders, as deans, we can counteract, and provide, I think, maybe ways in which, in particular, colleagues who are progressing through the ranks find empowerment in their own voice. And I really appreciate you bringing up the fact that oftentimes, in my experience, I'm seeing racialized colleagues who are being bullied and harassed in this way, much less. And I'm very aware of the emotional burden, the responsibility that comes along with sitting in faculty positions, leading many initiatives in regards to anti-racism, in regards to bullying and harassment, also being victims of this, and not having resources.
Yeah, I get those calls all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we just add the nature of it being insidious, because if it was blatant, we could act in some way. But the fact that in academia, it's very insidious, and it's as the definition that Sarah pointed out, it's much more complex than what society views as bullying in general, because people are smart, so they find very
creative ways. Absolutely. And this is where we use micro-inequities, right? There is that term we can use. Micro-inequities are when it's the soft bullying, but it tends to happen to people who are of gender, like if you're gender women, people of different sexual orientation, different racialized groups. So I could come in and say, hey everyone, how are you? But I could call you up and say, hey, Helen, how are you? How was your weekend? Did you have a good weekend? Okay, so I'm talking to the people I want to, so you know that I'm not talking to you. But have I done anything wrong? Right? Can you really claim that I did something? Those are the micro-inequities. Those are the little subtle ways of excluding another person. Telling them you don't belong here. I'm not your person. You're not in my in-group. So I will call and say, hey, Sally, do you want to go for lunch? But I'm not going to talk to the people around. Or I'll ask Jim and Sally and Harry, and you, Sue, sitting there. I just ignore you. Because you don't matter. So those are those things that are happening, and they're subtle ways. And you know what? COVID-19 brought a lot of bad things, but it brought some good things. Because now we have eyeballs on those things. Micro-inequities, I do a lot of work for government, and this is one of the courses they call for more often, right? And so many of these things are popping up, and so you can start documenting the micro-inequities, how they make you feel. Don't forget the definition, the legal definition of bullying, harassment, is that it makes you feel. It's the impact. This is the only legislation that you can lose your job on because of the impact, not the intention. You could have the best of intention and I could still feel bullied and harassed. So it's impact. This person, and it's also very important for you to let the other person know. I was wondering, is there something that I've done that we need to talk about? Is there something going on that is feeling a bit off in our relationship, or we're not really communicating the way we want to? Have I done something or said something? Actually, this is a really good strategy because you write it down too. Because I did approach Sally and I did ask if there was something that I was doing or did that caused friction in our relationship. And she said no. So now I am left to wonder why I am encountering these behaviors, these interactions. And so you could request mediation, right? You could request coaching. Sometimes just working with a coach can help you to sort of flush out some of those feelings, be able to put them on a chart, be able to look at the incidents. Because sometimes when things happen to us, you start asking yourself, am I crazy? Am I making things up? Did I really see this? This is really happening. And this is when you have that other person, you can say, this is what I'm experiencing at work. And through that conversation, you can start to get clarity, peel things back, and then come up with a plan of action and how you're going to do it. And a lot of times I spend time with, a professional will call and I say, okay, this is what I'm hearing when they come into my office or call me up on the phone or email. And this is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm hearing from you. How did you respond? This is what I'm hearing about your response. I'm curious, can we try certain things? So there are different things we will try to get more clarity of what's happening. And all of those can be documented. So you actually do have a legitimate case and you're not just whining. Because oftentimes I will hear from leaders, he comes in here all the time and complains about somebody. Every day it's another person. Well, what's different about this time? Well, this time he actually had things done in writing. Oh, so what did you make of that? Well, I thought it was kind of serious, but I just thought it was, no, because when it's in writing, right, that's what all the policies require you to do, is to put it in writing. Ask the person to stop, try to have some kind of dialogue with them to bring it to their awareness, and then put it in writing, document it. Yes?
I want to follow up on the comments that colleagues made. I think as deans, it gets more difficult, Joyce. It's not to suggest that you're simplifying it. But we exist in out-of-scope positions. Our academic colleagues are very smart. And so under the notion of collegial governance, they'll say things like, my responsibility is to keep the dean's feet to the fire. And they'll go on social media and say the most egregious things. I appreciate your suggestion. If I document it and I have a meeting with them, their union representative is coming to the meeting. There is no way I can have a meeting with a faculty member about what they've said without a union rep being, as an out-of-scope dean, if I'm lucky, someone from HR might show up to the meeting. I'm on my own. And so I appreciate what you're saying. But our faculty colleagues, wonderful human beings with belly buttons, they are smart, and they've figured out how to send the message they want. We were talking about at our table, my faculty, I've had Facebook warriors who say the most egregious things, but never use my name. I'm referred to as being countered. Somebody referred to me as the executioner once, with a decision about termination. And so, I appreciate what you're saying, but I can tell you right now, from experience, if I try to have a meeting with a faculty member about what the faculty member said about me, it's going to end up, most likely, in a grievance hearing.
Well, you see, there is that, so you're talking about an employee, so a faculty member is now bullying the dean.
No. Okay. I suggest probably in this room, I'm not alone.
Yeah, hands up who's experienced that in this room.
And I will say, when you are in the leadership role, you're going to get attacked. It's just part of the parcel. what I do say to my clients when they come to me with that, I say, what can you learn from this? What can you take away from? Is there any part of that criticism that you can learn from and develop on, or you can change things from? Because you know what? We can't take their voice away. That's all they have. They don't feel that they have the power. This is the only bit of power they have. So we can't necessarily take it away, right? That is how they feel they can express themselves. Because you are in a superior role and they can't change your decision necessarily. I mean, they can grieve something, but they can't change your decision. So those are a little bit more different when it comes to being criticized by those you lead. I think the piece here where I say is let's look at more of a relational leadership focus. Because when leaders come to me and say, my employees are criticizing me on social media, I say, well, it sounds like we have a relationship breakdown. Because I want my team members, no matter where they are in the organization, to be able to come to me and tell me they don't like something I do. Because I can't change something on social media. But if you tell me how you feel, how you've been affected by certain things, and why you feel that you need to share your piece with me respectfully, I'm here to listen. And so I would encourage you and challenge you to look at how you can create more of a relational leadership approach for those types of situations. Because you're always going to have disgruntled employees. And we do a lot of work. It's a program we run through all governments, because leaders get a lot of criticism, right? And part of what we're doing with them is teaching them those strategies to develop relational leadership approaches with their team members. So they don't hear about it on social media or from somebody else. They actually have those times where people feel I can say things and not be penalized for it. I can tell you that I'm upset about something that's happening and not worry about my job or my performance review or my promotion abilities. Those are becoming more necessary, especially for the generation that's coming up in the workforce.
Yes,
they have a voice.
I know, everything you're saying makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
In academic venues, and I know you're familiar with them, we have colleagues who make a living out of being a social justice warrior on Facebook with massive followers. One-on-one, they never say those things to me. But on social media, they will absolutely say those things about me. And I'm not talking about fair courtesy. We're talking about half-truths. I mean, you use the former president. Half-truths, alternate facts. And once they're out, there's not much we can do to put the genie back in the bottle. And I think you're right. You have to live with it. But I will say, as teens, it burns you out quickly.
It does.
It burns you out really quick.
I see a number of hands, and I can't remember whose hand was up first. Can you put your hands up again so I know who had hands up? Okay, go ahead.
It's like what you're talking about to me is, I'll say, preventive work. So we can work on prevention. So setting a culture in our faculty that will create a climate where people know that this is what's accepted and here's what's not. However, like the thing is that, so I work very hard at that, but what we're talking about is, for example, in my faculty, I wasn't dean, so I'm not aware of all the details, but I know for a fact that one person was a major bully, and not only to colleagues, but to the staff, to the students, so all the way around. It took 4 years to fire him. And so in those 4 years, there were like 30, what's it called, witnesses, 30 witnesses that came and wrote report and that took 4 years for him to get fired.
He was unionized?
Huh?
Was he unionized?
Oh, yeah, and so that's why, like, so that's what we have to deal with, is like, they don't show up, like, you don't have friendly reminders of how to behave, you know, like, they come and they have their union rep. I have a good person in HR that comes and backs me up, but at the same time, I mean, it's major litigation, you know, and and if you choose to go on that path, you better pack a lunch, you know, because it's gonna take a while.
You know what, it does, and you're correct. I mean, hey, they don't fire people when they're union. If you're unionized, your union was always going to be there seeking for another chance for you. That's their job, right? And so in those unionized environments, it is a lot more difficult to fire employees. I do a lot of work in federal and provincial government. It's hard to get rid of people. You basically have to kill somebody, and then even then you might get a pardon, right? So we see a lot of behaviors that in my private clientele would never happen, right? And that's the same for post-secondary, where there is a unionized environment. And I have nothing against that environment. It's just the culture. It's understanding what we're working with. You still, though, should do your documentation, and you still should do your report. Because when, for instance, they call me in, I need to see that trail. Because now I can write a recommendation. Everybody in the organization is scared to be the one to recommend. So that's why they call people like us who are not internal, because we can come in and make an objective decision, recommendation based on the paper trail. When we come in and there's no paper trail, it's like a fresh case, right? And even though we make a recommendation, the union is going to say based on what? So you need to have those paper trail. Because then our report can say based on the historical incidents. It's cumulative. It's been destructive, and we can see, and it makes our work a lot easier, and we can help you a lot better. So make those, it helps HR a lot better. Because if HR is doing performance, if they're going to do any kind of performance management, they need those paper trail. You can't just fire someone in a unionized environment. You need that paper trail. So when you don't document, they just get to last longer in the organization. You're actually keeping them around to not just harass you, but bully somebody else. So you're actually making other people's life unhappy. So that's why it's so important to document in your environment, because those will accumulate to now we have cause, we have just cause for termination. Does that make sense, everyone? Yeah. And with, when you, I didn't get your name at the back. Jerome, when you talk about those people who are social activists, those are people you want to get to have a relationship with, coffee with. I want to take you out for coffee. I want to hear your thoughts. Tell me, what would you do if you were in my role?
Joyce, I gotta, this is road here. So I hear you. I'm with you. I got some colleagues in the room, at least one who probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. If I would go after work for a beer with that person, I will be the best bud, and I don't drink with my staff. But that's what they want. They want a good old boys club where we can sit down over a beer and have that conversation. Unless I'm willing to do that, I'm never going to win favor with this small group of men who have an opinion of me based on what I do, based on my race, because it's pretty clear the language we use. So I hear what you're saying. Trust me, I hear. I wish I lived in that world. That's not the world I live in.
Okay.
That's not the world I live in.
So you could have water, but it's all about. I am the cheapest drunk on the planet, so I don't go for a drink. But if we're going for, I'll have water. You can have all the drinks you want. So I think sometimes though it goes to what is your intention? What do you want? Is it important enough? There comes in a time, and I always say this to clients, you have to determine if the relationship valuable enough to invest in it. If it's not valuable enough, if these people are not enough of an annoyance or you don't desire a better relationship, just ignore it. But if it's causing you sleepless night and heartburn, then do something about it. Because the stress will pile up. And guess what? People come and they will come to complain to me, and I was like, I'll have two employees come and say, Sarah, this. I was like, okay, a leader comes in and my employees I said, you know what? Your employees are here complaining. You are the one with the problem. You are the one complaining, so I'm gonna coach the person in the chair. When that person does that, how do you respond? How do you feel? What would you like to have as an alternative? How do you get that alternative? So that's how we move through life, because there are certain people that are sent here to make us saints. That's their job. That's their only job on the planet, is to bring out the sainthood in you. So every day I get up and I was like, okay, one more day to get better on the planet. Because somebody is going to come and test you to the point where you have to ask yourself, what was my name again? You just have to remind yourself, what is it? And stay in your place of integrity, because they will come. Challenges will come. And the more you are, the higher up you are in leadership, the more of those you're going to get. I want us to spend a little bit of time. There was a hand here, and oh boy, our 90 minutes is flying. I tell you, this is an exciting topic. Okay, you, and then we'll go down.
Okay, so I do have a question, and if it doesn't resonate, then we can pass. Some people in the academy, in my experience, actually bully the role of dean.
Yes.
Okay, here's the head nods. Okay, so you're talking a lot, Joyce, about relation building, and I love that. And I'm listening to Jerome, and I could name the person. I know of whom he speaks, and so could Jennifer.
Yeah.
Okay, and the reason I know that, even I haven't worked at that institution for more than 6 years, is because as I observed the persons, male persons who drink beer from a specific place, what happens is I have watched those people bully 4 deans. Now, it doesn't make it any less personal, Jerome, what you're experiencing. Yours is completely personal. So I guess a question I would have for you is, you're talking about relationality, which I see as relatively personal. It relies on my personal skills to build relationality. So what might we do positionally as deans to mitigate or change the space between these positions, recognizing that there are a few people in the academy who, it could be Ralph, and they bully Ralph because Ralph is the dean, and then they will bully Dilson because Dilson is the dean, and then they will bully Maria because Maria is the dean, and then they will bully you, and then they will bully me, and there we go. So that's my question, is relationally, but within the position, because some of it is not about the person, some of it is about the position.
Absolutely. It's a power issue, right? You have more power than me. Your role is one that gives you, just the mere fact that you're in that role gives you an authority and power over me. And that brings out my insecurity. So if I can aggravate the heck out of you, and I see it's working, why would I stop? Because that's how I get my power. That's how I'm even in the playing field. Because I can aggravate you. And I can do it and not get in trouble. Because I know how to do it. I've trained myself how to do it. And I've done it with others. I have experience. I'm an expert at this. So how do you deal with experts? You tap into the expertise. You give them a problem to solve. You find out what makes them tick. You deal with it. It all depends on how much aggravation they are. But really, most of the times, it's a power thing. It's not. So when it comes to the role, I feel that, and then you're female, especially if you're not an insider. I'm a male. I'm 6 feet tall. You're not. You're female. You're not 6 feet tall. Or you're of a different orientation or gender or ancestry. How dare you be in that role? I should be there. I want to make your life miserable. Am I doing it at an actual subconscious level? As an actual conscious level? Probably not. Because everybody has had some measure of trauma in their life. This person might have been called into the principal's office a lot of times and just have it out for people who follow, right? So it's psychology. It really does come down to that. So not all behaviors are consciously thought out. Most of our behaviors is driven by our subconscious. And the subconscious is where our traumas lay, it's where historical issues lie, and that's what drives us until we become aware of it. So I like having conversations with those people because they're good at what they do. They will tell you, actually, the chosen trauma and the chosen victories. They note it. They will tell me, oh yeah, when Harry was dean, I did this, and he got blah, blah, blah. This happened to him. And when Sally was dean, oh man, those are the chosen victories, right? They're gonna hold that. And then the chosen traumas are just gonna add on their trauma. Be the time when they get in trouble. Yeah, and he made me get in trouble, and I got, I lost pay, and I was suspended, or this happened to me. So they hold on to these chosen trauma and chosen victories because it just feeds them. And they pass that on to the next person who joins their group, and the next person who joins their group passes it on. And it's perpetuated.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that those microaggressions or the aggressions that we have been feeling can come from loss of power. And I'm wondering two questions. One, is that being exacerbated because of the pandemic and because we all feel that we have lost control over our lives? And is that perhaps why we're feeling more of the incivility, the bullying happening now than ever before? And two, if we name it with the bully, as you have said, if we have that conversation and we name the action, does that change his or her behavior?
Yes and no. If that person has a growth mindset, it will create awareness for them. If that person has a fixed mindset, they'll just dig in a little deeper. So it all depends on where that person is. Some people, you need to move them, give them a little bit more awareness. You need to tease them out. You need to build up, get them excited about something to bring out the growth in them. These are the people that you give a task to do, a job that I wouldn't trust anybody else with this but you. I see. No, it's not? Okay. All right. I was going to go outside like all of you. All right, they said no. So, he was going to leave us all in here, even had his suitcase. We're not burning today, we're staying. Okay, so it's really important though to recognize that, and you had two questions. The first was, do we name it with them? Yes, we do, but we might tease it out first depending on where they are. But the superordinate goal, the task where because we need to now feed their ego, right? I see your tenacity. I can see that you have strength in this area. I think you're the only person who could do this task. So you give them things to do that will make them feel powerful. These are actually brilliant people with good skills that have not been used appropriately. And sometimes they just need something else to focus on. And it's like little kids. They will act out to get attention. They want your attention. Jerome, that person wants your attention. Find ways to give them attention that suits you, not that suits them. So you have to just become more creative than they are. It really, they do. They're there to make us better people. I tell you. I am not alone in this. I was reading a book on holiness, and the guy said, this person is one of those people who send you to make you sainthood. I was like, oh, now I've got some more wisdom. That's what it's all about. It's true. They're here. That's their job on the planet.
I love the analogy. What I worry about is on my way to sainthood, I'm going to become a martyr.
And you have to choose. You have to make a choice.
Yeah.
Am I going to be a martyr or a saint? And you have to make a choice there and really look at the definitions and then choose from where you want to go. But really, truly, you have to just be creative, more creative than they are. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Was there another hand up? Okay, go ahead.
Do you have a strategy for when you do document again, and again, and again, and again, and there's no results?
Absolutely.
And then you have to keep documenting, but you're so discouraged that it's even hard to document what's happening.
Oh, you need to document your discouragement. Let me tell you, perseverance pays off in the end. These people have staying power. Don't let them run you to the ground. Document and keep a file folder. And every time you add another one, you reference the ones before. This is in addition to document, in 2020, 2021, 2019, 2018, June 5th, April 4th. You actually put that on the next set. In addition, this is the next, right? We're in a sequence now. So you are going to document until you get attention. And then one day you just bring everything on to somebody who can make a decision and say, this needs to be dealt with. So is it your HR? Is it, if you're union, is it your union you go to? It all depends on where you are and what you have as a representative. And develop good relationship with your HR. Because you will need them. And they will help you with those documents.
What if there isn't a good relationship with the HR? What would you recommend?
Is there only one HR person in that office?
Well, one person who's in charge of the documenting.
You need to start making coffee with that person. Coffee dates. But if you have a union, that's the other part you can go to.
Yeah.
Right? You can take it to the union as well and say, you know what? This doesn't seem to be moving on this end. I'm coming to you. And guys, don't forget that this is one thing that you can go outside your organization with. And I don't know how many of you know that. If you have your policy, if you're not getting solution from inside, you can go to the ombuds's office from your city or province. I've had cases from colleges and university that has gone to the ombuds's office. They can take it, you can take it, you can also, if it has human rights, you can go. You have the right, when it comes to harassment and bullying, those are the only two things. You can take it outside your organization.
Yeah.
You don't have to, if you're not getting results, because that's human rights, right? They fall under the Canadian human rights. So you can take it outside your organization. Most of the things they'll send you back in, you have to deal with, but those two are your human rights, so you can take it outside. You don't, as long as you've made the complaint internally. I mean, times where I was leading that piece where the internal complaints will come in, and we've had situations where students have taken it to human rights or to the ombuds service. That can happen, right? It does make the organization look bad. They want to keep it in, but if they're not responding in a timely manner, you have the right to do that, and you cannot be penalized by your organization for doing that. So keep that in mind as well.
Thank you.
All right, we good? All right, how much time do we have left?
About 15 minutes.
Oh dear. All right, okay, so Canada created the standards in 2013, and these are the psychological health and safety standards. It says that these 13 standards are recommended for your organization. And the first one, it talks about creating an organizational culture where people can thrive. And it talks about social, psychological, and social support, meaning that if you're being bullied and harassed, you need to have that. Your organization has a responsibility to ensure that you have that internally. So they have a legal responsibility to ensure that that's in place. Clear leadership expectations. So your roles are being changed often and your responsibilities, that's not clear. Those are all things that can cause mental health and emotional ill health, heart disease, stress, burnout, overwhelm. These are put there to remind us and to provide organization with a guidance, a structure to ensure that employees are well at work. Civility and respect, psychological demands, ensuring that there is an EAP program I can go to, growth and development, that I can get training at work, involvement and influence in a positive way, right? Workload management, I'm not overworked. Engagement, that I can engage, there's balance in the organization, psychological protection from harm, protection from physical safety, and recognition and reward. These are, and the 12 grounds that you can Google it, Canadian standards for psychological health and safety standards. There are 13 of them, and behind all of these are a full description of what they are. As leaders in your organization, you have a responsibility to ensure that those are in place. You know what the new trend I've seen is happening? Employees are no longer just filing a harassment complaint against their peers or bullying complaints. They're now including their leaders because they sat and watched it happen. So that was one of the last cases I dealt with. It wasn't just, this person wasn't just filing against the peer, but filing against the boss as well, who was a perpetrator, who was privy to what was happening.
And have you seen bullies turn victims? Like, because sometimes, you know, in this kind of discourse that I call them on it, you know, like I say, okay, well, you know, like your coworkers feel this and that and that, and all of a sudden their stance is really that of a victim. And so then it becomes, you know, he said, she said, and so it's kind of like the best defense is a solid offense, you know, and anyway, so that they turn the table on you. Yeah. So because relating to this, you know, like if you manifest your clear expectations or whatever, and you talk about the workload management and psychological protection of other people, they turn around and they say that they're being affected in those same spheres. So have you come across that?
Actually, a lot of times the people who are being bullied turns out to be bullies because that's how they're getting their power back. It's a reflex, right? Molesters become molested, right? They were molested. It's a cycle. So most of the times they have been themselves, they have encountered bullying in some aspect in their career, and having been dealt with, or in that same situation they could be retaliated. So a lot of times when I do investigations, we see where somebody was doing something to somebody and the other person decide, well, okay, well, now it's my turn. So you can see that. That's not uncommon. What you do in those situations is that you name it for both parties, but you both have perpetuated that. Where do you want to go from here? It sounds like the game is over. It's time for a new game. It's time for us to stop mistreating each other and start to practice civility and respect at work and treat each other better, because neither of you are happy. Why do we both want to be miserable? Can one of us be happy at least? Did I get all the hands? Oh boy, we don't have time for another discussion. we've been discussing all the time. Okay, so we talk about that, telling people to stop, let them know you're being bullied. I probably cover all of this already. Signs of bullying. Let's write through this and then we'll wrap up. You're feeling either of the following: uncomfortable, humiliated, embarrassed, coerced, disrespected, fearful. Those are some signs that you're in a bullying relationship. You start asking yourself, what is going on? Why am I feeling this way? What is this person saying? What are they doing? What am I? Sometimes we attract bullies to us, right? We attract that. So we have to ask ourselves, what am I attracting? Right? Am I attracting people to take advantage of me? Am I setting myself up? Am I spending time with the wrong people? So we have to think about our responsibility in that, because don't forget, everything in life is energy, right? We attract certain things to us as well. Additional signs of bullying: intimidation, lying, rumors, condescension, ignoring, lack of support. We have humiliation, taking away duties. Somebody has had their duties, all their duties taken away, all the people they supervise taken away. But that was because they were not doing it well, or it is the way it's done, right? So they can file that they're being bullied, but it's the way it was done. They were not being a good boss. So they lost the employees because the employees were complaining. They were not performing their duties the right way. So it gradually, one thing was taken, another thing was taken, given to somebody, then they had nothing to do. So you start seeing it starts somewhere, and we wait too long. If you have to take a duty away from someone, you should be providing coaching for them. Let's talk about what's going on for you. Let's talk about how you see that role and you imagine yourself completing or fulfilling that task. What are the hurdles? What are the obstacles? How can we support you through that to move to the other side? So you do need to have that conversation. Don't let things sit too long. Often we let these things go on and on and on, and 10 years later we're dealing with the same thing, and that needs to stop, because that's where stress is okay. All of us, stress is okay. We need stress to live. As humans, to be ambitious and to be assertive, we need stress. But it's the prolonged stress, the ongoing prolonged stress of dealing with a situation over and over again and not having a change. If something is causing us tension or frustration, that is what wears us out. That's what makes us unwell. So I want to skip to my signature model. This is what I use to teach people how interconnected all the areas of our lives are. And I just finished my 6th book, and this is based around this tool. Because what I have here are 9 dimensions of wellness: spiritual, social, emotional, occupational, intellectual, environmental, financial, physical, and in here is the interpersonal. Each of these dimensions are manifested in the interpersonal. What happens spiritually, socially, emotionally, occupationally, intellectually, all of these are going to manifest in the way I interact, in the way I talk, in the way I engage with others. Very, very important. And within these dimensions, what we've done is added some key life areas so clients actually get to measure and assess how well they're doing in each of these dimensions. And from there, they get a number, they get a qualifying number that tells them how well they're doing, and then they can start to see where they need to improve how well they are. The other layer to this are the competency teaching. So I've assigned the competencies to each of the wellness dimension. Because for too long, wellness was something that we just talk about, and there wasn't a way to measure. There were no competencies aligned to well-being. And you will notice that this is built around interpersonal, because most of the people that I encounter, most of the people who are in trouble, most of the people who are bullied, who are in conflict, are not doing well in many, if not most of these dimensions in their lives. So what happens when we're not well? We make other people miserable. Misery likes company. People who are doing well, I have not had anybody in the 25 years I've been doing this work who've come to see me and everything here is everyone doing well here. And there's a common denominator among the people who show up, is that they're not doing well in areas of their life, and they're either overcompensating in some areas, not paying attention to others, and not developing, so they lash out. They're having challenges interpersonally. And in the assessment tool, we have a profile analysis that shows the wellness, the levels of wellness that one can attain, and the 8 levels of wellness they can attain. And one here is the wellness deficit. You know, when you're in a deficit in the bank, you're overdrawn, right? You have to borrow money from the bank. When you're unwell in these dimensions of you are in a wellness deficit. So guess what? You have to make other people miserable for you to feel good because you don't have any. That's what the deficit does. And we see it so often and it shows up. And when we teach it and we start talking to people, they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't pay attention, I didn't think. But we start to see the relationship and it's very clear. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is to check out how well you're doing. This is also in my, we have the little booklets, they're available. You can do the full little assessment instrument. You can also just get it on my website and do it as well. I just see how well you are doing. Look at the areas where you're struggling, the stresses you're dealing with. In leadership role, it comes with a lot of stresses. Hey, it's part of the cake, right? But you have a responsibility to take care of yourself, for you and for your family and your loved ones. And, you know, when my colleague, who was a dean, got a heart attack at 53 years old, she was the only one in the bed. I didn't see her boss. I didn't see her board. I didn't see anybody beside her. So remember that. Your health and wellness is your responsibility. It doesn't matter how many phone calls you get from your colleagues. You are the one. She's over a year now. She's trying to rehabilitate. So these things are very damaging when they happen to our bodies. Prevention is better than cure. That's my motto. Let's improve those areas of our lives. Let's take time to unwind. What you're doing here today is brilliant because it's an opportunity to have community, to talk to each other. That's really important. It's part of that social wellness. And it helps with your emotional wellness as well. Helps with intellectual wellness. Giving yourself those opportunities to learn new things, expand, ask questions, don't be afraid. As I said, there's no dumb questions. We're all in it together. We all have belly buttons. Thank you all for your time and your attention. And, you know, I think I'm invited to have lunch with you or something like that. So,
Thank you, Joyce. Many takeaways. I'm taking away silence is dangerous. I'm taking away give them tasks to give them power. I'm taking away make a paper trail, create a plan of action, be more creative than they are, and I'm also taking away that I'm well on the path to sainthood. And I'm really thinking about Jerome's comment about not being a martyr on my way to sainthood. And I love that you ended with the wellness, because you're right. We're responsible for ourselves. We have a gift for you. We'd like to encourage you to please have lunch with us because we eat. So thank you very much for your time and your energy and for your talk. Thank you. Again, we're next door at the restaurant, and I believe, Katie, we have about an hour. And then Lace, Marie, and Rebecca are taking us through the rest of the afternoon.
All right, we'll see you then.
Ciao, Bella.
So?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Do you have a card?
I'm embarrassed to say.
Oh, take one of mine and
I will
email
take
me.
one of yours.
Yes.
I will email you.
Absolutely. Yes.
But I will email you. And then you'll have my card. You'll have my email. Thank you so much. It is a journey.
It is.
It is a journey.
It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So I just have to tell you that you opened my eyes because I was in Whitehorse and I was with the government in First Nations Initiative in Education. And I realized that I believed or denigrated without knowing. And the reason was because they were trying to get me as a directive to do things that weren't Indigenous.
And I said to the staff, this is what they want me to do, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to get in trouble, but I'm going against that directive.
You maintain your values. There's just come a point in time you have to stand up for your values and the principles.
Yeah, okay, all right. But I was eventually let go, but that's okay. I wouldn't bend.
Where are you located now?
I'm in Manitoba.
Are you? Yes. Oh, where are you? Oh, we need to stay connected.
Yes, I would love to. Yes. Yeah, well, I'm at University College of the North.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We do some very interesting program. I'd love to. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Yes, I think I would like to welcome you to do some development with our faculty.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry you're trying to clean up here, but I want to say thank you. And so I'm a fairly new dean, 2 years in, all through the pandemic, so never before. And I find myself in a situation where I'm starting to see, this idea of incivility. There's a few groups, I'm starting to figure out who's who. It's been hard to know through the pandemic. And there's a group, or at least one individual, tends to take everything personally. It's always a personal attack. She will use even the term bullying, and and it's always about someone attacking her. And so now there's a thing, and just like it usually happens, I think they're starting. The relationship is deteriorating, and I'm seeing it kind of go downhill. And it probably was already before I came. It's just we're back almost in person and all of that sort of stuff. I get novels of emails from and this person has attacked me, and I don't feel supported by you as the dean, and this is why it's happening, and I'm trying to support both, but I don't want to watch anymore.
I need an interpersonal wellness workbook. Give them these questions to do.
Okay.
And here's my card.
Yes. And so are you in Winnipeg?
I am in Winnipeg.
I'm in Winnipeg.
Yeah. Which faculty are you?
I'm the new dean of, well, not really new, it's 2 years in, University of Winnipeg Faculty of Education.
Oh, absolutely. I'm in Winnipeg. Let's talk.
Yeah, that would be great. And it's interesting because I'll talk to my provost, and everyone knows, HR knows about the person over here. They know, and they've known for years, and they're nothing. And I'm like, I came very frustrated. And I came from a place where a lot of what you had to say, I personally was, I stepped out of, I changed universities because of bullying, so I was a target. And so I was like, I'm not going to tolerate that, but I'm stepping it in, and everyone's let it go. And I think there may be mental health challenges for this individual, and so I'm trying to be empathetic, etc. But I mean, she's set the situation up that people are way less tolerant to Suzette than I think they put up with, and they're not willing to, and I don't think she has any idea that she's now become the bully, even though she's, so anyways, okay.
Yeah, let's talk. This I use this a lot with them.
Okay.
And I do, let's talk about some strategies.
I don't want to see it continue and just be another, last dean was 15 years in there, and I think it's just, that's the way it's been.
It doesn't have to be that way.
No, and it's way too much energy on my part. Exactly. I feel like I should be wearing stripes.
I know.
Because I'm a referee.
It takes so much energy.
Yeah, and when I was a target at my previous university, dean, and I was supposed to, anyways, when I was there, I found my family very